We're rolling. What? We're rolling, so whenever.
Me too. Hey guys! Hello!
Hello, everybody!
This room is like this crazy echo chamber. Welcome, thanks so much everybody for coming. There's so many people. We don't usually have so many people at the talk. It's kind of awesome to have the talk at the opening, because then there's this crowd. So I'm just introducing as a, just to give them an introduction, because Sean Ward here is a Caesar member, and so he can't introduce himself. Because
No.
And usually the person who...
I can't speak those words.
Yes.
Yeah.
I introduce, I hereby introduce, no. So, Sean Ward, beloved Caesar member, and Winslow Smith, artist. They'll tell you more about themselves. I'm not really doing a very good job introducing yet. Okay, and so, go.
Yeah, we were just going to take questions and answer them as best we could. His work's here, and we're here.
Yeah.
So.
Nice.
What were you aiming for?
Well, I mean, I guess I started out with the book, and I was interested in sort of making the show, make a book, and then sort of make a show based around that book, or sort of have the book produce the show in some way. And so I guess that's how it started.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I kind of took rocks. I've been doing a lot of walks along the beach for the most part, and that's been my start for the most part of kind of producing everything. But we've been having like phone conversations, not that frequently, but like maybe one or two before we had the show, and you were working on the book originally and mentioned not moving, and that kind of started, that was the spark for kind of working off of everything and kind of getting things in order. And maybe it's like,
yeah, sort of a theme. Somebody asked if it was based around a theme, which it wasn't really, but it sort of was in some way.
It's really hard for rocks to move.
Yeah, right, exactly.
yeah.
Somebody has to pick them up, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So can you talk about themes in relation to the book? Like, how they complement each other? Or?
Yeah. I mean, that's like the source book, right? But I guess like I saw the book as like, I guess like a swimming instruction book that doesn't instruct you in how to swim, is the idea. And then that was like sort of, I think it's changed a little bit, but that was sort of like one thing. And I guess what I was thinking with the photos was sort of the act of, like there's an act of swimming that's going on, but also the act of reading. And I guess the photos were sort of thinking about that. Yeah, I mean, I guess specifically thinking about reading and like those moments you're reading and you sort of lose your place for like 10 seconds or something, and you sort of realize your physical place there, and you've been in this like maybe non-physical place. And this sort of, yeah.
So then why this?
Yeah, I mean, I was like this idea, I mean, using the figurines to make that sort of instruction book that doesn't instruct you how to swim, I guess. But giving it out was, I also thought like about the book, making the show, I was interested in like that same act of reading sort of happening within the show, and then how that would happen, like, you know, how that would change maybe somebody's experience of just like stuff on the wall or something like that.
I guess, what do you think of trying to learn things from a book? It seems like the whole process is like you created something that's deliberately other that in some ways may be asinine.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think of the whole process of like learning something from a book? Then?
Yeah, no. I mean, I think that was the figurines or the drawings were just really, it was like that. It was like a physical act, and yet you're sort of like put there, but you're not there. And I was interested in this. Sort of, I don't know if it's asinine. It's sort of absurd to me, but there's also it's also sort of its own experience. You know, you're imagining this one experience, you're having this one experience, and that sort of schism is, I think, something I was interested in. I think those are actual photos too on the screen that just couldn't be printed, I guess.
What are the lines?
It's from a broken camera, those photos, and at first they were going to be printed, but they couldn't be, and then it sort of became this other, again, sort of tied into these, just that thing I said before.
Couldn't be printed because the lines won't appear on the print, or?
Yeah, it was somehow because it was broken, like the actual camera's broken, the sensor's broken, it was like, it was pretty boring, but it was like to lighten it, you had to stay in 32-bit mode, but then 32-bit mode wouldn't print, so then it sort of problem solving. And I'm actually sort of happier with the video as sort of, because I sort of saw them as sort of another element in it. So.
Sean? It's a little unusual for you to be so systematic in your visuals, so just want to talk about that? Or composed?
For the past couple months, not having a studio to, well, it's not even that. It's more of just like I kept thinking of lenses or types of lenses. I mean, talking to Winslow a lot about them and talking about what type of cameras. And I mean, that's his forte. And it ended up being thinking a lot. I mean, thinking just about the scanner as another eye as well too, and just trying to find a way of having something else or removing my own vision from collecting these kind of like generic rocks or whatever. So, and just having someone else's take on it.
But those are sort of flat rocks that you can skip on the shore of the lake. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why did you want those?
Well, what I've been doing with them in my apartment is they're kind of like building blocks to me. They're like little kids' toys in some way. It's like found toys. And then I like casting them in plastic as like some type of redundancy of like them. I mean, every rock ends up being different, no matter how kind of generic it looks, and I kind of like that. Where it's just a repeated act of actually making them or getting them close to being the same.
What are they cast in?
Just plastic.
But these feel like they might have been bricks, or not bricks, but they might have been building stones at some point in the past. Like they fell off of some Italian church and fell into the sea, floated across, and then moved into the fossil stage, and then went into Lake Michigan. I'm not sure about it, but
I'm on a similar wavelength.
But did you get all of these in
they came with
the
the
Lake
car.
Michigan?
Around Lake Michigan,
Okay.
in Chicago,
Not
and
East Coast.
Indiana, yeah.
But it's not. I mean, it's not what they're made of, or what
Their location or anything like that, or
right, their history, or how they became this kind of rock.
no,
or
just
differentiation
that they're a
between-
rock.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Every rock is kind of like a rock.
Right.
Right.
Do you see them as loaded with that kind of metaphorical, the rock, like the thing that is just there that you then must, are resistant to or something, or that resists your activity?
Well,
in the same way that Winslow, I feel like you're.
in some ways, well, it's like pairing it up, putting it in this space. Like we're always a little unsure of what's happening in the work until right? For
Yeah,
the most
I
part.
haven't seen it made.
Yeah, and then when we put it in the room, they kind of had a nice kind of play off of each other, like a swimmer not moving, a rock, a diver, kind of like things like that. And I thought for a long time that there was a poem called "Diver on the Rocks," but I couldn't find it. So, but but that's there's this maybe those associations get loaded when they're paired with somebody else's work, ideals, expectations, things like that.
Did you want to put the monitors on the floor so that you're closer to all these like weirdo fault lines on the floor, or like?
That was
I don't know.
we noticed them for
Yeah.
sure, but I don't know if we gave it another thought. Yeah.
For me, I think the monitors on the floor is just like, it was, I don't know, on the wall they stand so separate, and they need to get, I think the work sort of works off of itself, so I think that took sort of for me.
Yeah.
It's like, you guys are, I mean, obviously the title show is not moving and we're talking about rocks being stagnant things, but I keep thinking about the sort of linear progression. You're talking about taking walks and like swimming, especially like this kind of swimming where you're just like back and forth. And maybe it becomes cyclical. And the act of reading too is sort of obviously like a narrative linear process and the way these are set up. I don't know, I guess that's more of an observation than a question, but and maybe the title sort of reacting against that, or? Yeah,
no, I mean, I think the thing I was interested in not moving, like why I wanted to title it, it was after a song I liked, but it was also, it's been like, it's a weird idea because you can't stop moving. So, what would that, I mean, that sort of sense that everyone knows, and so how do you, what would that mean? How do you explore that?
What's the song?
DNA song from, it's off No New York, so it's very easy to get. It's one of the better ones.
What are the sheets?
That has nothing to do with the show.
What are the sheets from?
The sheets? Oh, that's just, I don't know, there's some sheets I was shooting photos on.
It reminds me of when you go to a hotel place, especially like in Florida, and they have pools there, they have sheets on the bed.
Yeah, it's a Florida, I think it's definitely a Florida thing. Yeah. I'm not from Florida, but the person who owns them was. So.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm from Florida and I can vouch for that.
Yeah.
Like, this is legit.
Yeah.
These are real.
They're great sheets. I really like them. Sorry, Rachel.
Really? They're incidentally the sheets that you happen to be shooting?
I mean, they were, but I mean, the decision to choose them was different, I think. I mean, there's some, I like that they're sort of, you know, as the background, they're sort of more interesting than a lot of the figuring, it's visually more activating. And, so I thought I'd pull your attention away, sort of thing.
I have a cumbersome statement question, I guess. I was thinking about the book as a sort of way into the rest of the show. You're calling from an instructional diagram that sort of requires an imaginary leap of faith to insert, the reader's position into both occupying the position of the swimmer and being watched as the swimmer, right? And I feel like the drawings in here, as the sheets, as most things in here, are iconic enough and neutral enough to allow the viewer to occupy the position of the maker, right, as with the book. So I guess my question is about not moving and remoteness in relation to both, to either despair or patience.
Yeah.
Right? Like, where's the remote? Like, why? What is the remoteness motivated by in the work? Is it a kind of like helplessness in the face, or an absurdity in the face of making meaning, or is it kind of patience with the viewer and kind of methodical, standardized? Like, Sean's saying, I walk on the beach and pick up rocks as though it were interesting, and it is. But like that also requires a kind of imaginary leap of faith that like we trust your actions to be able to produce meaning. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's a fundamental question for the show that I have. I mean it gently, not like.
Oh no.
Do it harder and hotter, please. That's not what I mean. Right?
No, I like that idea. I mean, for me, it was more of a psychological state than like a question of meaning. I guess that's something I've thought about recently. I don't know if that answer. I mean, I can't answer it if the questions were. I think that's sort of part of what I was so curious about myself.
Yeah, I feel like that's part of distance that actually makes this interesting. Is that like, you're the swimmer, you know how to do this, and you're giving me this sort of like hard, neutral, iconic thing. And I'm like, when I get into this position, what does it look like? Does it feel the same? Am I doing it right?
Yeah.
And that's part of it.
Yeah.
Question mark, sorry.
Question mark was implied.
There's sort of a movement within like a trap space. Like,
Yeah.
Even in the photographs too, like we know that we're like in a room, we're on a bed, and like located within a limited space.
Yeah.
And same machine in the pool, like you might be moving back and forth and like going for miles, but
Yeah, it's like A to A.
yeah.
So is the remoteness the result of despair or patience?
Despair is a really loaded word.
I mean it loaded.
Yeah, totally.
Shoot
Is
it
there
out
a
of
third
space.
option?
I feel like she
I know she's asking me. I'm thinking
of
about it.
extravagant clarity for Sean.
I say it's more like patience than absurdity.
Okay.
I think more than anything else. Or thinking everything is absurd.
Patience plus absurdity.
Yeah,
plus despair.
Exactly. or how to deal with despair. I think. And I think the walks are my ways of like kind of just. And the work that results from it is just kind of like keeping all that shit together. Yeah.
So
in a way that's systematic, that's methodical. That's
it becomes a routine.
Right,
yeah,
right.
It has to.
And also about like surface tension in a way too.
Can you what do you mean by that?
No?
I think that's right.
Surface tension.
Bring it on, man.
What?
Can you explain
I mean,
that?
maybe I don't think I can explain it too well right now.
Just another word, maybe.
Another word for surface tension?
Maybe.
I mean, I agree with Dana in some way that like all these, there's something like neutral about these things presented here, like these works presented here, and so like I had to like, I was like, okay, why don't I just pick something as an entry point? And I started looking at that photograph without any text or like instructional image on there. It's just like the photograph of that fabric kind of beginning to be pulled taut in some way, and then noticing that monitors were like sitting on the floor, and I mean it's like really like literal way to look at the show too, like but I don't know, I don't feel very smart today, so I needed to like figure something out for myself, but like just like water versus land as well, but then like these like rocks necessarily don't have to be like they can be either below water level or above, I guess. So I mean I like it. Nah, I don't know. See, I'm not doing a very good job.
No,
But
I'm with you.
But I will.
You're floating through it.
Yeah, I'm like floating through it, but it's not. I don't think it's like. I don't know. Patience sounds so gentle for the show. I don't know if it's about
Anxiety.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
maybe.
like that.
Is
Maybe.
Is that what makes
It's a
it
rigorous
happen?
patience.
Anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anxiety. Sure.
Yeah.
Maybe that's another word for it. That's a good word for
Surface tension.
surface tension.
Yeah, I mean that's where definitely I would be more. The description of anxiety or inertia.
If you look at the word surface tension, it's like what you appear to be on the outside is something intense, but there might be something else under the water, essentially. Which I don't know, like, no man looks like this man in the photo. Like, no man has that ass, like, no man is swimming quite in that way, which I think is really kind of interesting, because he's like this functional human abstract that's supposed to be every man, but no person actually looks like that, which is kind of weird.
I think a lot of people in the Olympics look like
Yeah.
that.
Maybe I'm totally wrong. I think you're dead on.
That's true.
Yeah, I couldn't help but think about like, well, the way I swim in the water.
In other people's lanes.
Probably, or like floating in the middle of the fucking pool, like, in the flag. But also, I think when I do actually
actually rarely engage in this kind of swimming. Like, I don't like to put my head all in the water, you know, like, and I'm okay with that, and I don't care that it looks bad. But yeah, I mean, it's like you have to come to terms with like what is essential and like this ideal abstract or something.
Yeah.
Find your own way around that or something.
Yeah.
That lined up pretty good.
I know, I was making it
Is that a real one?
I guess
That's
they just
an
lined up.
affirmation,
Is this real?
I mean, they weren't altered, but they were.
That's probably not half the bottom half.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
So what's motivated this body of work for each of you?
Do you want to go first? Or?
No, you can go.
I mean, actually, yeah. I mean, anxiety is definitely that. And I thought about. I think I said maybe to you in class at one point. I was thinking about inertia a lot, and I mean that by inertia of the body or something. I think. And, I think it's been something I've made work about for a while, and this was a way to sort of re-deal with that. Go back into it, but in a different. Under different terms of, I think the book, I don't know, I mean, it creates another type of action that was going on. But yeah, I mean, the sense of anxiety or something, and what that is, and, both in a maybe, what you're actually experiencing, but also maybe what that would sort of, how to sort of describe that in a sort of model or something, Freudian, it's not Freudian, but like Freud always does these models, like algebra models to me or something, and so it's like sort of that same idea of kind of, and they're really sort of wonderfully simple and not very helpful, but exactly. Some amount,
I guess going off of what you said, continuing with the anxiety is like controlling it in some way too. I'm always interested in finding ways of doing that, I think. But I guess recently it's been more of I've always considered things to come in fragments in life or something like that, and they're slowly. It's funny to hear people saying I'm making the meaning or something like that. That's what I keep hearing in other words in some ways. It's which is actually kind of, it's that part is maybe more interesting, and maybe that's, it feels closed off or more generous in that way. This is a tangent thought right now about the whole thing. But rocks specifically, I just kind of consider myself a really bad hobbyist most of the time. And so I collect things like seashells, rocks, and I've been really into weeds lately and just looking for them.
Looking for particular ones?
No, because I don't know them. It's just trying to identify them. And next to a flower versus a weed, I have no.
Well, there is no definition for weed other than that you don't want it there. So
right, exactly. But that's
so
the fun of it. When on these walks, there's a bunch of people with gardens along the way to the beach, so I kind of stand in front of them for a while.
So what you're trying to root out then, no pun intended. You have the intentions of the maker of that garden, right?
Yeah.
They don't want calendula or something. That's
right.
That's just planted itself there.
Right, but
you don't know.
I don't know what the fuck anything is.
So right. So you're
and
trying to find order in it.
I'm trying to figure out, and there's one in particular that's really interesting to me. That's actually, if I go down Pratt and around in Walcott, it's just it's right there on Monroe. It's on that corner, and I watch the guy build a new fence and all this around the garden and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm the creep in the neighborhood most of the time.
That's
standing around.
But why not make a garden?
Well, I don't know.
Maybe you're learning how to make a
Maybe.
garden.
Does your weed interest, is it ever active? Do you ever stare at the garden for say 30 minutes and then decide I'm gonna remove all of X plant because this is a weed?
No, I'm not proactive. It's up to them to fix their own garden. Because I don't. The thing is it's more of it's looking for the most part. I'm really interested in looking more than actually being an interrupter or something like that, or interception into someone else's kind of project. That's their own thing. I would maybe, like Molly said, I would make my own garden then in relation to like what I've seen there. And I feel like that would be better, and then that would be a conversation to have. Say, I would, it's like, come check out my garden. I've been looking at your garden, and this is what I made in retaliation or in competition. It's like
Retaliation.
fuck your flowers. But it goes along. I don't know. Now I'm going all the way off.
Aggressive gardening is really fascinating.
It's super, and
Your holes are deeper.
Behind the scene bomb.
But weeds are super aggressive though too. Anyway, they're the parasite in the whole thing, which is kind of interesting. And anyway, let's get back to the fucking rocks.
Can you watch them take over though, or like in your walks?
Which are we talking about now? The weeds or the rocks?
Like the weeds, like as I can think about like early in the season, like I have no fucking idea what's here.
Or which ones pop up first with a weed attacking it, or like
and
things
what
like
takes
that.
over.
Yeah, exactly. And there's certain things that are gone already in that person's particular garden, which is kind of fascinating. Especially what bloomed right after it switched really quick too, which is interesting. Still, I don't know what they're called because I just take pictures of them. But yeah, so bad hobbyist. More of like I've been thinking more and more of like rocks in particular, all these other activities of like what it. And you've asked what. This is off of one of your questions, like on our
what I asked for.
You asked me what type of painter I would be if I still painted.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I said a landscape painter, and that's kind of like what I've been really interested in, is trying to figure out what that, considering the walks, like being in the landscape and kind of performing that. I think that kind of practice more than anything else. So. That was a long story. Yeah.
So Sean is not interested in being an interrupter. Are you?
No. I actually don't know what it means by it. It made me think of that movie, which is not anything what I'm doing.
Well, it was in particular to Chris's, like actually pulling someone else's weeds out, like their parasites or something like that. That's for them to. It's almost like, it's like you got your own shit.
Yeah.
That's what you got. It's like I might be here too, but I got my own shit. You got your own shit.
That's a good question though. I mean, I guess it's something.
Sorry.
I thought about.
As your question.
You can go on.
Huh? I'm done. Yeah. It's your hero, man.
That's an interesting. It's something I've been thinking about recently. I mean, in terms of what sort of artist you are or something. There was some New Yorker article on that guy, Tino Segal, if you guys read that. And it was like, it's just a different way of working, and yet a way of working that has some concerns I would share with or something. But I've worked out myself a lot for a long time, and it's just something I've decided to keep doing. Because I guess on the other side of that, I also see like Moira Davey. And that's somebody I guess I feel more invested in what she's doing, even though, there are all these alternatives. But I don't know if that means exactly what that would mean. Interrupter is maybe just one option among many.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking to I guess maybe loosely affiliated with Sean's description. I feel like the color bars on television are a meaningful break in the action. It's an interruption, and it's a kind of thing that like allows you to focus on what you're looking at the entire time. Like, this signal is gone. Kind of break in the signal associated with anxiety and inertia, with a kind of immobility. You sort of, I think that's a meaningful for interruption too, not necessarily like a kind of.
I see what you're saying. For a viewer,
in terms of for the viewer, in terms of kind of accelerating vehement diegesis of what contemporary art needs to do. And having something be static, and having it be low, and having it be quiet. is as meaningful, I think, as a like, I'm gonna blow this building up. This doesn't work.
Yeah,
You
no.
build a building up and then like magically you'll blow up 2 buildings. So
Right.
that's just how it
Yeah, no, that's a totally different. That's a thinking about it that way. Yeah, I mean, the other thing about art is the working outside of it. Yeah, what you said, sort of not blowing up a building or something.
Right.
I mean, we do a lot of things all the time. Maybe art is a good time to not do those things. Yeah. I mean, that's one possibility for you. I don't think I have any politics about it right now.
Right, because I'm part of what I was saying. It's like, that's your garden, you deal with that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm dealing with this garden. And like, this can function as a kind of, not as a moral pejorative, but kind of like metaphorical corrective. Like, I'm doing this, you can blow up the building.
Yeah, right.
Blow it up! I'm over here with these
It's
rocks.
like I might agree with
Yeah.
that. Yeah. It's like, go ahead, blow it up.
It made me think of this, your comment made me think about this, I wish I saw like a cabinet issue or something, this photo that was taken of this building where I think people were sort of like asked to paint the outside of their buildings as like a way to beautify the city or something. And there are just some blocks that just refuse. And like the like agency and like not doing something that was
Yes,
you know,
yes.
like
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
very much
Yeah.
anyway.
No, right, and it's super important for like, because I'm sorry, I'm talking so, but like, part of my capacity to apprehend the information of the show has to do with other shows, and has to do with like what people are doing or something. And I think that, you know, Sean walking on the beach, you excerpting the swimming manual is an eccentric activity, idiosyncratic activity, unless it functions as this kind of like not doing, you know, in terms of how it makes meaning contextually.
Yeah, I mean, I've recently thought, like, if a kid's growing up, I would really like them to know, or her to know, that they need to be a good quitter before a good winner, because I think it's sort of way more useful, actually, in the world today, is learning how to quit and doing it well and purposefully. That's not to do with it. I'm quitting. So, yeah.
And goodbye.
What is that? Can you go on about that? Quitting? What would you teach your kid to quit?
Well, I mean, it's like there's, I mean, I don't know if I meant it sort of casually more, but there's a lot of things that I guess we get led to do, I feel like, and I mean that maybe, move in a professional way, you know, and there's like a certain amount of seriousness when you need to apply to things all the time, and for kids it can be anything. I mean, you watch kids and they have like their whole day filled or something. I mean, I don't really want to talk about kids. I don't have kids, so I don't know what they do. But
And productivity.
productivity, exactly. Expectations, and there's a certain idea about, I mean, maybe, and sort of like joining is this idea of like, it's sort of supported because it's, you know, that means you're being sort of proactive and healthy and doing whatever, and I think there's this, a psychological attachment to that, like a certain health value to that. And you know, you could think about it another way though, which is that you just keep doing and doing and doing, and you're never actually gaining any autonomy. You know, you're never actually saying this is me.
So
And I would think that I see more things working in limits than anything else. That's
So it seems like things are like looking at things when they're more self-directed and not being influenced or led by someone else. Because I'm totally a sucker for lost causes, especially in my life. But so I wanted to disagree with you, but it sounds like it's not trying to find, not necessarily like being a good quitter about your own lost cause. Or
no. But knowing what to do, you know. I mean, one choice is always a choice against a lot of other things, right?
Right.
Sort of. And that's I think that understanding that more, or understanding what that would be. Maybe it was that what I meant by the statement, but again, it was sort of casual.
No, you can't make casual statements. This is the prosecution. You are being held to. I mean, because that would be the place where I would go.
How's the rebuttal go?
It was okay other up to the something like that, but I don't know, but it was a casual statement. You know, like and that's where we reach. Because I think, like, I guess I keep, you know, I have a sort of religious commitment to an over-investment, overdoing, sort of like of everything, right? It's sort of exhaustive, like overeating, binging, you know, just like diving, sort of, I don't know, over-experiencing for the sake of knowledge, not for the sake of productivity necessarily, but for the sake of experience, hence knowledge, like so that I know something in the world, and I don't know, testing, right? And but so, you know, but then I'm also coming off of 5 days of not doing many things that I normally do, so I'm also sort of like more amenable at the moment to, yes, quitting. But I think quitting after
well,
some level of extremes, and but so that there's that. But I want to say something else about that. I guess, where does conviction come from, and and why would there be a lack of conviction in this sort of, you know, because when you first started describing despair and patience, I kept thinking about, it's not just despair or patience, it's oscillation, right? It's oscillation between like going toward, like being ready to kill yourself, and then being like, no, there's still a reason to do this. And then going, you know, and there's something about the oscillation that is the dialectics of that, right? The sort of like, okay, I'm gonna get up again. I'm gonna go from horizontal to vertical one more time. I'm gonna try this out, see how this is this day, or whatever. And that sort of, okay, now I'm going to sleep again, and there's that damn twilight. Twilight always makes me sad, or whatever. Like, fucking A, try it again tomorrow. I don't know, that this movement back and forth, and what kind of movement is that, and what kind of, that even in if it's a little kind of experience, it's still experience. And then what does that experience produce in terms of conviction? That all experience eventually, I think, produces conviction. That, you know, at some point, you've had enough experiences, you have to say, well, I know this, fuck off, because I know this. Like, there's something about saying, knowing that you know something, right? That you're like, you don't take it back anymore, because you're just like, but I know it. Like, you don't have to agree with me, I don't have to burn your building down, I don't have to steal your weeds, but I still, like, I know this, so.
Yeah, no, right. I mean, I think I have two things. So one thing about this sort of about what Dana was saying about the context of art. I mean, I don't want to make large things or something like that, and that's a very deliberate choice. And I know what that means in the art world today, and that's important to me. But in terms of, I guess, that other idea of experiences, like the quitting sometimes is not understood as, I mean, I'll just go back to the metaphor, but quitting isn't valued as an experience. You know, we don't value, you know, experience has to be something. You have to tell people what the experience is, you know, but what if you have experiences that you can't tell people, you know what I mean? It's like, and so there's some, that's like, that's where that sort of productivity, I mean, I think of, I mean quitting in more of a social sense within that. Not necessarily quitting on yourself or something like that. I think it's a sort of more spiritual idea.
Wait, so quitting in the social sense? So like quitting like,
well, like
social
outside,
pressures?
yeah, I mean
like
outside.
I've stopped brushing my teeth? Like I stopped...
Yeah, no.
What, like quitting going outside?
Yeah, I mean, well, no, I mean, I just was...
Like quitting baseball because my dad played baseball.
That's what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, or that idea of quitting something isn't necessarily like, I don't know if that means quitting life, you know, so it's a different, that's sort of different. These are why, it's why metaphor and so we
in so much, or in specific things. That's what it seems like. I always think of that. It's like you quit participating. It's like, I don't know.
It's like the Bartleby.
Right.
I would prefer not to.
Yeah, that's about right.
Okay.
That's a good
right. So that's why I'm talking about the dick, basically.
Yeah, right.
But so, I mean, because I'm sort of like, well, there's either everything or there's the abstention. I would prefer not to. Like it's like like, once you get into the, I would. Can I go off one more time? I'm only looking for permission. I apologize. Okay. Because I've been thinking a lot about and reading a lot. Because I didn't do it when I was young. Sylvia Plath. And I should have done it when I was young. I know I have. But it's where it's where you guys are going with it, and I think it's interesting. And I also
It's interesting.
Never mind.
No, bring it. Bring it.
No, really.
Bring it.
Sylvia Plath.
I read that every time I move somewhere new.
Bring it.
So first of all, I'm ready to confess that they've all read Sylvia Plath. I was actually too embarrassed. Like I thought it was too much of a cliche when I was. So I quit doing, like when I was actually the right age, between 16 and 25 or something, to actually the proper Sylvia Plath experience. 12 to 25, whatever. Shut up.
Josh. Oh, you knew that is. Vice presidential nominee.
But there's this Alvarez guy who talks about her suicide and sort of extensively philosophizes about it, and I agree with this aspect. And he sort of has like journal quotes and different things where he talks about this sort of ravenous appetite, exuberance, overdoing of things that Sylvia Plath would engage in, which was basically the razor's edge to feeling of total apathy and despair. Like, it's just like, I better be hungry, because if I'm not hungry, then I'm gonna fucking lie down, and that'll be it. I'll go horizontal. Like, I have to convince myself that I really, really care, because I might not care at all. And I had never fully acknowledged to myself how close those two things are.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Because I think I've been sort of holding the, I fucking care,
Right.
but I've always had people really near me who have been like, yeah, I don't fucking care.
Yeah, no.
You know, and I've kept them around, like on purpose, you know, and starting to realize, like, oh,
balance it out.
to balance it out, but realizing that, like, oh, I'm keeping you close so that I don't have to hold that position, because that position scares the shit out of me.
Yeah.
That's like one step away from, like,
Yeah, no.
really done, you know.
No, I've been, it's a morbid curiosity on that position for myself too. Since I've been making art, and then
right. So it's a way.
Art's always been sort of a thing to sort of play out that position for me.
A theater for it, though, so you don't have to do it for real.
Or just or just like something like that.
So then we're in a perfect day for banana fish with those sheets.
Yes.
We're in Florida.
Well, no, and go. Please.
Oh no, I was just gonna add to that. It's just like it could be. For me, I always feel like it's more of caring too much and not knowing what to do with that, and then just kind of like laying it down. Too, just like kind of like putting it away. That's another. I don't know.
I understand this.
Yeah.
You go, Dana.
I understand this. You know, I mean, that many of us do. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, the analogy about blowing up the building, like, everything that I do, I expect to, like, make a seismic shift, a paradigmatic shift, and then everything around me, out of love, out of that kind of, like, not out of, like, that kind of, like, ego drive, but a kind of, like, possibly, I don't know, drive for power, despotism. But it's not. It's not that. I'm just. If you're gonna consider that,
This is still recording, right?
No, I just shut off my mind while I was talking. No, I mean, like, that's the question though, and it's a genuine question for you two, and I think for many of us. Like, Bartleby to the end, Kafka at the gate. Like, this idea of a kind of exemplary renunciation. Like, where does it go? You know, like, I can throw down my arms, I can throw down my love, and be like, that's it. You know, and then I walk off, and then get a fucking subway, and no one cares. Like, that's it. It's like that's the transaction that you're making, right? It's this very demanding, difficult gift that you have to, I think we do, elect to give over and over, and with increasing stupidity as time goes on. You know, and I feel like that's what commitment
Wait,
is.
you
It's
as
like,
in Sean, or you as
you as in one, as an artist at this. I think many artists at this moment have this these priorities, this urgency and comment.
I mean, but
Well, I don't know.
and
Sorry.
sorry, argument would
Oh,
be
bring it,
that.
yeah.
But Sean, for instance, to use you as an example, he said it, but he has multiple collections, and I think it's like you have hobbies, he said, but it's not right. I mean, it's okay. You don't have to be totally committed to your hobby. It's like there's a varying degree of commitment, right?
I'm committed, but
Yeah, but it's like, then what about that? It's like you don't have to commit to just one collection. Like, you can collect rocks, and then you're like, I need to move on to these for now.
Of course, but I think that what I'm trying to point out, or certainly where I'm speaking from it, is process, is the sort of verb of engagement. Not like shells, then stamps, then weeds, then chicks, then bikini bottoms. Just like, what is the drive that urges you to make your own subjective taxonomy? Why would you collect and preserve? Why would you excerpt things from their context and make your own? I mean, like, these are it's the drive, I guess, that more than like the activity. Like hobbies, sure. Habits, sure. Like we all have these variable degrees of addiction and engagement to a kind of mark making, to a kind of movement, which is, I'm sorry, I talk a lot, but that's kind of what I mean. It's not so much like, can you do something more valuable than plastic rocks? It's not that, it's just like the gesture, you know, and that's what Bartleby does. He stops gesturing. He becomes increasingly immobile. Like, that's the point. And he doesn't breathe anymore. Like, you know, and it's like towing this very delicate line of like between action and inaction. Between like I can't do anything and I might not ever do anything again. See it.
It's almost Melville, too.
Yeah, oh for sure, yeah.
But Bartleby puts himself into this law office. Like he puts himself into or this copy office, whatever it is. It's a law office. But he, you know, he puts himself into a context where he has the context itself will bear down on him for a while, right? It will expect something of him, and he gets to then keep saying, I would prefer not to. Like I guess I'm thinking about like what's outside of you and how you gesture to that, and where like the weight is allowed to go. And I think part of the putting all of the weight that we're sort of talking about, that the urgency, or if there is a sense of urgency on the individual artist in this way or whatever, like it seems to me that the pile of plastic rocks like doesn't necessarily take the burden off, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, does it satisfy for a while because there is that for a while satisfaction production, right? That's like, okay, I've fucking fed the beast now. Like, for a little while, there's a reason to go on. I made the meaning. I put it all together. It made sense. I proved it. My theorem. Whatever, you know, and like I kind of go around being like, yes, it's awesome, it's in there. And then like one day I go back to the studio and I'm like, fuck, it's not in there. I made that shit up. Like that's not actually what it is. But there is that feeling for a while that I don't know.
Yeah, that seems inherent in the gesture of the like making plastic rocks. Plastic rocks are lighter than the real rocks, right? And you're like lightening the load quite literally.
Well, lightening the load, yeah. But yes, I would agree. But do you think that lightening the load is what does that do for the experience of what you need from the making of it? When you think about it.
What you need as a viewer from the making or from the artist?
As a maker. I would make it as a viewer, and I can tell you about that.
Great.
Well, it's horribly disappointing. In relation to real rocks, because you know, once you put something in relation to a real rock, like rocks are super satisfying objects.
Yeah. Well, I think it's more of like being disappointed in that urgency, or the feel of urgency.
Disappointed in the urgency to have a real.
I don't know. That's a poor way of putting it.
What, to make meaning?
Yeah, something like that. Or maybe it's like
just to make art or something.
Or make it.
Sorry.
Make anything.
I mean,
Make anything in some way, but it's also more of like I feel a great deal to make things for sure, but it's also like maybe I don't know how to put this.
Quit.
Yeah, give me a moment.
I mean, I still wanted to pick them up, but when I pick up a rock, I want to feel its weight.
Yeah. Maybe things need weight.
But I like them as objects, as these like kind of stylized rock-like objects. Not, you know, it's like I didn't think for a second that they were rocks, you know, per se. It's like these are plastic pieces of plastic that look like rocks.
They suddenly become rocks in various moments. Like if you turn one over, suddenly, you know, like there's this one, that one closest to you guys, that little brown one, that looks like you actually put some effort into like trying to stain it into more rock-like. You know, like you were like, oh, this is exactly what I'll do, and then you were like, that didn't work. Never mind.
That was chance.
That was just chance.
It
came out of the Okay. Okay. Well,
dust
from
from the other
or
rock.
whatever. Yeah. Dust from the other rock. But it does. Yeah, no, they don't have to have. They don't. Things don't need weight. But when they don't have weight, when they have less weight or whatever, like how does that?
I know, but I mean, these two, like for instance, like the stack you're touching right now, and the rocks over here, they're also like tricky sculptural objects too, because like the way you know the way the surface is on the photographs there, for instance, and just the plasticness of the plastic
organizing? Like, you know, like the number of rocks on the image versus the number in the slot? Well, you can though. You could count.
I guess so. Yeah.
You know,
could.
quickly. Like you can.
Yeah.
I would take me about 30 seconds, I think, to not count all of these. I'm not going to do it. Somebody else should do it. You can't count all of those unless you're autistic or whatever. Right? You have special gifts for doing that, for being like, I understand how many toothpicks are in the pile, but only if you have a gift for doing that. No normal.
Did you decide how many to make? Like, what's the number?
Until I ran out of plastic.
I
I mean, these are the disappointing answers. That's alright. But it's more practical too, for the most part.
That's all disappointing. I don't think that
But did you count them?
Well, it's kind of
But did you count them? Do you know how many there are there or not?
I could say that I probably went through the mold that I made like twice, and with some hiccups here and there. So, and there was probably about
Okay, so you didn't even
20
think about
something
how
on
many
them?
you were making. Counting was not part for you of this because you're now.
choosing the rocks
Okay.
for them. We're really specific, because I have a bunch. I have a bunch of things.
What was the criteria?
They had to be they had to actually be part of my building blocks, where they were collected on one trip from Indiana, where they were all flat and slightly smooth, and they could actually stack on top of each other in some way. So yeah.
So I mean, I'm just I guess my confusion for this is because you talked about your walks and your connection, and then but then you're presenting 3 objects made from that action,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just wondering, why does it have to be translated this way, and for you, instead of just presenting the stack of flat rock that you've collected?
Well, it's the attempt at making meaning for myself out of these things that I find in the world.
So the act of collecting is not meaningful enough yet for you.
What's that?
The act of collecting is not meaningful enough for you yet, or you distrust that it won't be meaningful for us, the viewer, or?
I don't have anything to say about the collections. I think is more specific. Like if you're talking about the things in general, there's nothing. They're just general to me. There's nothing specific. And then when I start doing these things, I mean, for the most part, this is something also.
So that this gives it purpose for you to go
Yeah.
these walks?
Yeah, to
This is
continue
your
to do it.
interaction.
Yeah, this is something that's like I'm going to make something of these walks.
But that's kind of, it's funny, that's a good question, I think, and it ends up pointing to looking at the weeds in the gardens too. That like all of this is a kind of, it's not hobbyist so much, I think it's like apprenticeship. It's like I don't know yet what I know about these things, so I'm trying to discover. Because it seems like you do have criteria for the rocks, you do pick up rocks that are flat so that they can be building blocks. Like that's actually a specific decision making.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily think
That's when I arrive usually. Yeah.
that's when you arrive? What do you
There, like I don't go out with that criteria. Do you know what I mean?
Right, I don't go into my studio with any
Right,
criteria either.
yeah.
Right,
Yeah, it's the
find
same
it as I
shit,
go
yeah.
along. Yeah.
Right.
But then I trust that it's the criteria that I found, you know, but where it has to be followed through too is the question that we're sort of asking. Like why when it's found, oh, I've decided they have to be building blocks, then why not build something? You haven't built anything you sort of built something here, but I feel like it's oddly transformed again. Like if this was about building them, then it had to get turned at an angle. Then it had to get turned into something that's like a placemat / mouse pad. You know, like what? I mean, so there's like all these other steps that had to happen after the sort of impulse of the collecting.
Yeah. I mean.
So there's not just one interruption. There's like.
If you spend a lot of time by yourself, yeah, probably, which probably most people do, is it's those questions come up.
But then when the maker talks
But
mainly about the walks and the collecting, and not about how enjoyable was that to make these objects for you. It seems like you don't even care as much about these
Oh.
subjects, but you really care about these walks and the connecting.
I do. I care a lot about them.
Because we haven't
I don't-
talked about how, oh yeah, and then I did this with the rocks, and I put them on the scanner, and then I decided to print them because then it remind, there's a little bit of disconnection for me hearing you talk about your interest and what is presented to us. It almost feels a little dismissive. It's like,
Well, there is a disconnect after the making, for the most part. A lot of it is, that's the reason why I started these collections in some way, where there is consistently, oh thank God. there's consistently a disconnect from a lot of these things, and the things that I care about the most, which might actually be the art in the end, is actually the walk and the actual collecting part. But it's also like, is there, to me, maybe making these things is more of like spending that time with myself with these things and doing them. And like most of the time to me they're like little jokes, like in some way. Not jokes in ways of like a jab in the side or anything like that, but it's just it's really, it goes back to that idea of like, can I make like questions like recently have been like, can I make rock sexy? How can you do that? Right? Like it's really simple.
is that what you tried in the back of that video there?
This one, this is like gambling to me. So
It's awesome. Like pachinko or like full on gambling?
yeah.
Gambling joke.
I guess that it's just that. It's just,
See again, bad habits. I was like, what? So I'll look that up later. What's that?
Good gambling.
Oh, yeah.
What were you?
It's just that that's. I guess I would like to hear that coming from him instead of the walks and the connecting that we can't really experience, which is. It's just like it's research for you. It seems like it doesn't necessarily work with us as a viewer. We get these objects now, and I want to hear like, how did you make that video? I mean, how did you think about this video as relating to this? This.
Oh, how it relates.
Yeah, it relates to your collecting and your walks and your research and your interest.
It doesn't though. It does and it doesn't. That's the hard part to explain, and that's why it's like that. It just ends up being really boring and tedious to try explaining. I think it ends up being more about like even how like Winslow was talking about his book of like how each thing has been formed from this single idea. I think it's because they're all kind of everything that from knowing Winslow and myself. It's just like the things that we do. Yeah, you can call it research, but it's also like just kind of doing things or something. I don't know, or having interests, but it's also when it comes down to making the work, I think we look back and recollect what's necessary or something like that and put it out there. But it doesn't. I don't feel like it has like a direct relation to a collection, like that idea of.
Sure, but these are very specific. I mean, the plastic, for some reason I can enter that more in terms of how you're talking about your work. But these are so stylized, and that means there's a lot of decision in terms of a look of the thing. And so that confuses me in terms of how you're trying to reach us. Because they're so stylized. The plastic rubber, and it just makes sense to me, but then the other two I get like, huh? What is the stylization of it that I don't know how you're thinking about it?
It's just looking again. Maybe it's just like that again part.
Well, can we characterize that stylization?
Sure.
Maybe we could give you feedback because I don't
That
think
sounds
it's just
great. That would be helpful.
It's feels a little cynical when I say mouse pad / placemat. I'm not kidding, right?
Mm-hmm.
They feel like products. That feels like a commercial for rocks. I mean, there's that way in which I remember this one time in Stupidity Seminar where I was like, wait a minute. This is ironic, and we don't even recognize it as irony because irony is so deep within all of us now. Remember this day? Which is not to say like extricate the irony because you're not going to. It's in us, fine. But like that doesn't mean that we still shouldn't be able to sort of maybe see what happens when you let it sit for a long time, and the cream can separate off, and you can say, okay, there's this part, like And I think when you say the long boring part, or you say like a number, you talk about
Magali's completely right. Like, you're being a very good detective, I think. You're sort of like, you know, like you're going for the, like, yes, the decision making when you decide to turn to the viewer, when you decide to enter the white cube, there is a level of cynicism. What's the word we can use? A level
Self-protection.
Self-protection. That's an interesting word. That's different than cynicism.
It's different.
You know, that we see all the time, and I think we could talk about it in terms of conceptual art, but I would like not to, because I think that that's a badly used category.
Is it self-aware? Like, So I mean, I think like this cynic ironic that's sort of embedded in us. This is a discussion I've been having with another friend about sincerity. That like I think any maker today, like you can do things with sincerity, but there's an inherent irony, and to me that's like a level of self-awareness of like just knowing what your sincerity is, even if you are 100% sincere about it, just like knowing what it is, how it's presented in the world. And I wonder if that's where, like, when you start making very specific decisions, if that's not just self-awareness about acknowledging that these things are still, they're all there together. It's the cream, it's the separation, and it's, you know, in one thing.
Yeah.
It's not homogenous necessarily, but it's all there together.
Acknowledging all that, yeah.
So we have to sort of deal with, like, that it's a mouse pad. My collections, my experience in the world is really reducible to a mouse pad placemat.
Yes, I think that we must. Because,
Right?
because that's what's in front of us. That's what's been put in front of us. You know, I just like, yes, like I'm rounding off the corners, I work at the Apple store, that's it. Like, that's it. I mean, that's what we're getting at. And I think that like part of the whole show is a kind of real comprehension that you can't give an unambivalent gift here. Like, you will risk too much. Like, that's it. And I don't know, I feel like it's important to sort of like detect and investigate and figure out like what the motives behind all this are, but it's also like we've been treated with these rounded corners. We've been treated with this kind of like weird Indiana casino porn of rocks. Which is rare, but okay, this is what you did with your like little Wordsworth walk. You made it.
That's what I want to hear about, though.
Good
That's
for
what
you.
I wanted to
Like,
say that.
Thanks, Dana.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
You know, but that's the thing. If he gets here and the talk and they say again, and then I came home and then I turned these rocks into this.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm asking too much. It's not an explanation, but it's an excitement from you towards these objects, or a certain attachment to what the transformation, what happened to like the result of these walk, like as a thing. Like I would like you to be attached to that thing also. But then if you keep referring to the walk,
but it's also giving it away. It's like that's to me. That's where it's hard for me to explain what. Because like the video itself, it was like it took months to get to it. From like gathering these photos and stuff like that. You know, it's not as linear as the question maybe, and maybe that's what's throwing me off. And maybe not understanding my own practice in some weird way or process. I don't know.
I mean, but I guess like I keep thinking, and I might be misunderstanding the question in some ways, or I don't know. I feel like I'm misunderstanding a lot of things. But to me, there seems like there's that I don't think there has to be a relationship to the walk or the sort of reading hobby to the work necessarily. Right. That these things exist separately, and that one can be inspiration to the other. But the excitement that you have and what drives you to go out and engage in those activities that are sort of like separate from your art practice or a part of it, that same excitement doesn't need to necessarily transfer through, right? Like in a sense that it can be a different kind of excitement for the production of the object that sort of has somehow pulled itself out of the walk, but isn't meant to like replicate the walk or give the viewer like a reenactment of the walk. Or like I don't look at these and I'm like I understand Sean's relationship to it.
I also think there's like another whole conversation of art as collection, which is essentially what it does. I mean, it just makes collections. And I don't know if you think about that, but I think about that. Well, I think about that.
No, that's not what I mean, Chris, in terms of like I don't necessarily want the representation of his walk, but when I keep repeating myself.
Well, it's maybe it's going back to the excitement and it's still
These
going
are
back.
objects. We have 3 objects, I mean, that,
My
I guess
excitement
I make
is
paintings. I
fleeting.
can say I'm excited about this painting. I've succeeded in that painting
Yeah.
because I wanted to communicate this, and I feel like this one did it. So I just, you know, I guess that's what I'm hoping to hear from a maker of object in this case. Like this one is, for me, feels successful because it translates this, so it communicates this. That is based on whatever interests I have and is previous. So it's not a representation of the law, but it's a how successful of a translation in his mind, and it's like what he's interested in, what he's excited about.
But it's also a bitter and hilarious substitution for the walk.
Yeah, but I think
Great.
that's
important.
Yeah.
Like, I
That
went
is
this
important.
walk, it was super beautiful, I was essential, I was really feeling it. It's a plastic, fuck you, go on your own walk. That's
Yeah.
what it's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like I really.
I'm gonna write that.
You
It's recorded.
That's it. All right.
You do or you don't like that?
I do like that.
Yeah.
It's more of it's like yeah, it's in some ways it's like giving something away that's super non-generous too in some way. I kind of like that idea where it's doing both at the same time.
As a stand-in for this experience.
Right, that is mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now we're getting
Yeah,
somewhere.
thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
I want you to start the talk with that.
Yeah.
It takes a while.
It took us fucking all four of us over here. Like,
Fuck you, what?
Or
You know, because there's this resistance in your presentation that you're not bringing to the foreground, and I think the resistance is where it should begin,
Maybe.
and then see where things go. From
Yeah.
there.
Maybe it's also never actually having to gotten to this point.
Yeah,
with
yeah.
other people too. I think that's been the hardest part is actually talking about this stuff in a productive way. That because I find people being ironic, but I also don't find people. I'm gonna watch my words there.
Yeah, but this piece seems to
Doing it what?
summarize so much. I mean, you know, you said that Winslow was asking you if you're still a painter, what kind of painter you be,
Mhm.
a landscape painter. I totally relate to that.
Yeah.
I'm like fucking taking fucking landscape photos right now.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And but it's the same thing. It's like this is exactly why this should feel like a mouse pad or a placemat because
Right.
you can't like all that you want to do when you do that sort of thing and that activity and when you're taking this walk
Yeah.
is like replicate that, but you can't fucking do it. It's impossible.
Right.
And there's all this
And I love
garbage
like
that
Thoreau for
yeah.
trying.
Right, exactly,
You know?
exactly. And that's like the
You know?
sincerity is there, but so much the
Yeah.
awareness that you can't present that.
Yeah.
Take your own fucking walk.
Right, and then but that's what Thoreau or Emerson or any of them are like. It's like, nah, fuck it. You know what? It's still my shit that I'm
Right.
doing.
But I
Go
feel like
do
the
it.
video works very differently. The video is really about
Yeah.
being excited about rocks and getting us excited, but it's very flashy.
No, you should be.
Whatever.
It's like rock.
Yeah, you should be. Yeah.
Yeah, like I should see those rocks too, but like,
I actually didn't expect that.
I wanted.
I
thought
is
yours
that what you're talking about?
Froze.
Oh, no. You
No,
guys
go
go
for
sorry.
it. No,
You're in the tall scene.
I was thinking about that new movie with Tom Cruise. That's what I thought. With that new movie, like Rock with Ages.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
I was going to say that I see that the enthusiasm that you're seeing in that video, I don't see it in the video as much, but more in Winslow's work it's showing up in a strange way where for me it manifests in the attention to the margins, which is of these photographs, the way that this one is cropped in strangely. It's as though you've given up on almost all other attributes of the image itself. Whereas here it's coming from a more, it's plastic, right? It's specifically plastic, they're not wax, they're like acrylic plastic. So there's like a mass production, like the materiality of it is coming from a more like commercial place, whereas here I think that there's the material manifestation of these things, they both have the same kind of refusals, but where it's happening here, it's like there's still some enthusiasm where you're going and you're like, but the margin, like, wait a second, there's still this shred of hope here. So I feel like this, in a way, like you guys are operating on two sides of the same coin, but yours is like the angry side, like the side where you are kind of pissed about things. You haven't only until recently acknowledged it, like that your walks. Yeah. shamefully produced, if I may say so, like in a great way. Like
Yeah, no,
that is obviously like totally wrong.
Where's the shame exactly?
Well, like let me see the cover. So that's just not much about it. Yeah, that's just not much about the cover.
I mean, like low effort, like.
But in a totally authored manner.
Of course. I'm just wondering.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, like stapled down the middle, folded in half.
Right.
Like, but there's still something. I think there's still a whiff of. I don't know. I guess so. Anyway, I just think it's worth acknowledging, guys. It does kind of oddly pair. At first, it all felt like this other piece, and now it feels like it is bifurcated, but it's of the same coin.
Yeah, I'll just go off of that because I think that like ambiguity or ambivalence or irony discussions are sometimes. Like I think there's a lot of different types of ambivalence and irony, you know, and they function in very different ways, and it depends on context and depends on who's saying it, you know, and where you're saying it, how you're saying it. So it's like, and I still, I don't know, I guess I still believe it's productive, also, but it has to be. But there's times I don't see it as productive, you know, and it's not all one thing to me, and I think that that's sort of part of that.
That would be a lovely place to start a conversation as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to be a condescending dick, but I'm being a condescending dick about that because I think, like, please. Well, you know, like, you have such a good point to this conversation, and there's this way in which you both so bowed out for this conversation from the start and put it all on us, and then sort of swallowed words. I mean, I'm giving you a proper critique. It really bugs the shit out of me because it forces like this really exuberant effort out of me that I really hate. And then we have to do this thing again and again and again. And I'm just like, I don't know what happens if you occupy a slightly to the left or to the right of your position. Like, because what if we as an audience went totally apathetic in response to your work, which is how most audiences will respond to this work. Because that's what that does to
continues,
right? Yeah. So like I usually, as a normal human being, would walk in here and be like, cool, and walk out. But I'm not a normal human being. I've decided to be committed to this sort of stupid soapboxing that I do. You know. So then, what do you do? Like, what do you bring?
Well, that's super important.
It's just like that.
Just for the white guyness.
We were waiting for that.
I feel like it's
I was waiting. Maybe I should have started out with that. It's like, yes, we're just white dudes. What's up?
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, I think that's true. I guess I was sort of. I mean, I was.
But it's. Sorry. No, go ahead.
Crisis of masturbation.
I didn't see it as a. I didn't think about it like that. I guess I just saw. I mean, I guess first of all, I thought it was a Q&A, so I just was like, well, we'll do a Q&A. But also, I guess I feel like. Because I also feel like, you know, I'm here, it works here, so anybody can ask any questions. Of what I say doesn't. Sometimes I think that it would actually impede conversation. But also, the other thing is like about like statements about that. I mean, sometimes it's, you know, it depends on what people want to talk about, or also it depends on what work you're showing. I mean, I think there's a difference in sort of showing multiple pieces or something like that, or over time, we're talking about a concern over time, and sort of what this piece is specifically. And I was sort of curious about how this, I mean, for me, I guess, selfishly, I was interested in how this piece specifically works and the sort of ways it goes. I also saw it as sort of a piece that wandered a bit, and so to sort of tie it down right away, I thought would do harm to, I guess, people being able to experience it. So that's, I guess, that's how I thought about the beginning of the talk, or how that happened.
Yeah. And I'm not expecting, I don't want to tie down, but like, what are the poetics of that? Like, what, you know, because there is a sort of like, I guess what I keep thinking is like, I've done this, I've taken some photographs of my books, I do it all the time. You have done exclusively that, right? So like, for me, that's like a tiny little side project, but for you, that is the project, which means there's a lot of thinking going on. So I really want to know, like, what are the poetics? What is the thinking? What is what about the framing? And I don't want you to necessarily come at me frontally with that and tell me about the framing or tell me about edges or tell me you don't have to think about those things. But everything you give me is going to give me some sense of how you do that.
Yeah.
So maybe you take a super oblique approach, but then somehow that gives me this sort of world. And instead of getting that, I feel like what I get is this like, white dude like pulled back, like assumed subject position. There's an assumption, I think, about subject position that's like, I don't fucking know what you're talking about. I have no idea what goes on in either one of your heads. Like, you guys are as alien to me as anything. You know, maybe you're the center of the world, but not my world. So give me anything, you know, like, and I'm super interested in what that was and what approach that was. But I'm so tired of the like, hold back, you know, and like, because it's a nothing. It's like it's an assumed. Yeah. It's okay that I'm here. Of course I'm here.
Maybe especially in setting up like
I wouldn't say
I don't mean it as such an attack. I mean it as like I want more.
No. I mean, I don't know about you, Winslow, but I've had these talks before, and it's also more of like there's too much thinking, and sometimes every time that we act, I should just speak for myself. Every time I tried to talk about it, it's like no one wants to hear it. Yeah. So it's more of like, fuck it.
Yeah, I'm
So
okay with it. I'm okay with it. I'm gonna be really generous, but I'm okay with it. And it feels like Plato Socrates and that shit was really annoying to people. But like, you know, like I don't know. I'm the same way. I think I function better in like an engaged dialogue, and I don't always know where I'm going. But when I get there, I know when I'm there.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's knowing. It's like warming up to that point.
Is it Plato and Socrates? I mean, if it's Plato and Socrates and Emerson and Thoreau and.
Not for me, but.
It's more.
Go ahead. Well,
I
don't know. Like what? There's got to be a sort of there's got to be a language equivalent for that.
Oh, what?
A language equivalent.
A way of engaging.
A language. Yeah.
A language of conflict that like kind of steps aside from this kind of performative neutrality, right? Because otherwise it's a kind of what I think I've done is kind of like I'm glue and you're rubber. And whatever, you know, and if you're going to stay neutral, whatever I say just sticks to me and bounces right the fuck off you. And that isn't backwards a way of dealing with the playground itself, and it pisses me off. Just like, hey, you're resisting this? Just like, that's your problem. Go on your own walk. Like, yeah, it's true, but like, what's being, you know, I'm standing, are you standing, so you're standing with stuff. No, I feel like that's...
Well, maybe, okay, go ahead.
Well, please,
No, it's like, maybe the simplest way of putting it is it's like what I said probably at the beginning, is like getting obsessed with this idea of like, I thought there was a fucking poem that was called Diver on the Rocks, and now it's like, what the fuck does that mean, and maybe is that the meaning of this show? It's like, you know, and where can that go? And that's like, no, I'm gonna go home and think about that.
Yeah.
You know, that's the next thing. Like, and that's why it's hard to maybe talk about what's like present right now. It's like, I'm not even computing anything.
So what about the poem?
It doesn't exist, so it's like, no, maybe it's time to like, maybe maybe that's.
We should write one.
Exactly, write one. But that's also like taking the stance of like the free flow of meaning that people are getting from pieces of the work too. Also like, that's what I've been thinking about, is like the joining people's practices too, a lot of like people who have similar, almost have similar actions that they're taking in producing the work, or similar thoughts, or kind of things like that. I'm at a loss for words right now because I'm just trying to catch up.
No, it's great.
With myself.
Me too.
So it's maybe joining those two things together to kind of make a whole, and finding a way to actually, whether it remains the same kind of level, or or like it like produces some type of, I guess I'm going to go with heat, right?
Sure.
Or something like that. We'll go with that. Frustration, yeah. Or it actually brings it to the surface and kind of shows it more. Like, I don't think if Winslow showed his piece or I showed my piece separately that we might have actually gotten to any of this. And it's kind of where I've been at.
Yeah, I mean, I would have probably talked more about, I probably would have thought to talk more about the body and the illustrations of the body first to let people in, which we haven't talked about totally fine. So it was that sort of, I think that was different ways.
I've been thinking about stories instead of statement as a better way to sort of, express how you get somewhere. You know, it's like when we always think we need to like come up with statement form as opposed to just talk about. You know, actually, the best thing you said was about not finding that
Yeah,
It's a very
yeah.
story,
Super
you know,
interesting.
thing, and that makes us, we can enter your frame of mind that way. And it's a very simple thing, it's not
Yeah.
about, you know, making a general statement. So, you know, you could have just said, you know, I called Winslow Wednesday and couldn't reach him, and he called me back and we didn't, you know, like there would
Yeah.
be a way to enter your thinking about this, that would be,
You could just be
you know,
validating that thinking. I like it.
But I don't necessarily personally want to enter the show or the work via the fissures in your plan, via the failures of the project.
Right.
Like, I don't want there to be like, okay, yeah, there's no poem called Back on the Rocks. This isn't how you swim. When I read Wordsworth's Tintern Abbey, I cry because I wasn't there, not because I get it. I cry because I don't get it. Like, is that what we're doing? Are we talking about the aporia? Are we talking about the lack? And the
But
sort
why
of
not,
distance
though?
between experience and its kind of aestheticized recapitulation. Like, I'm interested in that, I guess, as the facts of the show. This isn't how you swim. This isn't how you read. This isn't how you encounter rocks. This isn't how you
That's
encounter
it,
the world.
yeah.
This is artificial. Like, that's
Yeah.
a huge part of it. And like, I love this sort of, I like the sort of anecdotal, generous story bit, but like, it's a bit. And like, I want, and as far as like the role of the artist, for a historical moment, like I want artists to be like humble and generous and sincere and great and ethical and bad, but I also want this experience to be formalized a little bit with the kind of semantic code that we use to communicate inside this group. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
For both of you, I feel like that's, sorry. Right.
As far as that semiotic code that we use to perform inside this group goes, that's maybe where it's like the nicest to compare the two, like the two works or whatever. Just that there's like a sort of relaxed but clear relationship to the rectangle. You know, like the body is doing, you know, constantly. It's echoing in all these ways, and then you have the strong. What is it? The diagonal is dynamic, like by very nature, right? And chosen, like, and it's funny because it really flattens.
Art history stuff
It
there.
reads. What's that?
That's old art history, right?
Yeah.
I like it. It was good.
Okay.
That's like some like Tarkovsky.
Composition conversation that we don't have much. I mean, then we have to do all this
No, it's good.
existential crap.
I think you're right.
But it's, I mean, it's funny because that flattens, or dynamism flattens just as fast into a kind of rote, like that's, I think it would be much more compelling actually if it was completely in alignment with, you know, then it wouldn't look like a placemat. Like I think it's only the dynamism of it that makes it look like a placemat, the same way that like Leonardo da Vinci gets put on a coffee mug, you know, like those sunflowers, the expressiveness gets completely flattened into the mug, but you can't put a flat thing on a mug because the mugs are already flat or something like so. I don't know. I just think it must be too. Mugs aren't flat around. I don't know. It's funny to think about. Yeah, but compositionally, and you know, you've got the scatter and the so there's all this sort of like attempts at like dynamism, but it's
right, but it's super flat.
But it's super flat. Yeah. But then Winslow is not even attempting. I mean, there's the occasional diagonal, but you know, mostly it's just lying down, like totally horizontal.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I thought it was like on the bed. Reading it out.
You can practice swimming in bed, right?
Yeah,
Using the book.
Yeah, you could. I thought about that. What would happen if you did both at the same time? Probably wouldn't be very good at either of them, reading or swimming.
Should we say a last comment?
Yeah.
Should we call it?
Yeah. Do you have that last one?
No.
Well, maybe I mean I keep going back to the Dana's thing. It's I mean I was gonna say this maybe I refrain from saying is the lack of communication too. I'm kind of interested in.
But I can see that, and I don't know how comfortable I am with it, but I think being obtuse is like a decidedly modern attitude, like in like making work. It seems like I feel like a lot of my friends who are making work right now, some of the work I just can't, I don't get it.
No,
that
well,
at all, but I find that attitude in making work, like as like a stance, like I find that interesting. I don't know why so many of my peers are taking that up on themselves to like make work like that.
mhm.
So I see it as like a more culturally kind of interesting attitude. So maybe some of that's reflected here. Maybe that's why I sometimes I feel frustrated with that, but
Mhm.
I'm just gonna deal with it. I'm gonna make meaning out of that someday.
Yeah.
Maybe 10 years from now I'll understand it.
Yeah, that brought up like the idea of like or the remake or something like that. Like remake, like all these movies that are like my favorite action movies have been remade. It's like that kind of action that frustrates me more than anything else. I don't know. It's like keeping the original. It's like that idea of like there is no. I don't know. Maybe now we're getting into fucking originality and all that. So.
What? What were you saying?
Now we're getting to originality and all that. I don't know what to say at this point. It's more, I'm not sure if it's, I don't feel obtuse. I feel kind of super engaged in people's work and my work and talking about it, but it's also finding, maybe it's in the not knowing how to talk about it, or it's not having a space to talk about it in some way. Maybe this isn't the space to talk about it. Maybe it's a different space. Maybe this is the space to kind of frustrate expectations, or something like that. You know, that's kind of, you know, it's like sometimes this is like a tried and true space. Like, you know, but there are faults in it too, and it's, I don't know. I have all these different thoughts about it. I'm not sure how to pin it down or bring it concisely to a close right now.
You
So.
can, like, Werner Herzog, he did a remake of Bad Lieutenant, and supposedly he has never seen the original.
Right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
like maybe you could, I was like, wow, that is a really ballsy fucking line. That is amazing, but
Yeah.
like maybe but I found it like as like a powerful kind of claim or tool that one can have, like
Totally. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
really you are gonna tell me that you've never seen this movie that you remade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I don't know, maybe there's some like complicated somebody.
Cool.
Yeah, cool.
I didn't see that.
Thanks, Winslow,
Thank you.
Sean.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you.
That was
Yeah,
great.
thank you.